Introduction. Subject Project Update. From Elena Rodriguez to Self-Date, Tuesday 3:14 a.m. I can't do this. I've been sitting here for 5 hours and I have nothing. I've cleaned the kitchen. I've organized my bookshelf by color. I even looked up how to bake bread from scratch. Why am I like this? Everyone thinks I'm this senior designer who has it all figured out, but I'm a total fake. If I turn this in, they'll see. If I don't turn it in, they'll see. I'm stuck. I just want to turn my brain off. In 1913, a man named Carl Jung sat in a quiet room in Zurich, Switzerland. On the outside, he was a success. He was a famous doctor who studied the human mind. He had a beautiful home by a lake. He had a family and a big career. But on the inside, everything was screaming. He had recently stopped talking to his mentor, Sigmund Freud. This wasn't just a small fight. It was a break that felt like an earthquake. Jung felt like he was losing his grip on what was real. He began to have terrifying visions. He saw giant waves of blood washing over Europe. He heard voices. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall into a dark pit of his own mind. Most people would have run away. They would have tried to find a way to numb the fear or stay busy so they didn't have to think. But Jung did something different. He decided to drop into his own mind. He decided to face the monsters. He spent years writing down his dreams and talking to the people he found inside his imagination. He called this his confrontation with the unconscious. He realized that his mind wasn't trying to break him. It was trying to tell him something. He discovered that we all have a shadow, a part of ourselves we try to hide, lock away, or pretend doesn't exist. Jung found that when we hide these parts of ourselves, they don't go away. They stay in the basement of our minds and make noise. They trip us up when we try to walk. They whisper that we aren't good enough. Jung realized that until you make these hidden things conscious, they will control your life. He said that if you don't face them, you will call your struggles fate, even though you are the one causing them. This book is about how to stop that fate from ruining your life. The Invisible Error. In 1999, a group of the smartest people in the world watched as $125 million turned into space dust. They had spent years building the Mars Climate Orbiter. It was a high-tech machine meant to circle the red planet and study its weather. Everything seemed perfect. The launch went well. The ship traveled through space for months. But as it got close to Mars, something went wrong. The orbiter got too close to the planet's atmosphere. The friction and heat tore it apart. It was gone in an instant. When the scientists looked for the cause, they found something shocking. It wasn't a giant mechanical failure. It was a tiny error in communication. One team of engineers had used inches and feet to measure the ship's force. Another team had used the metric system. Because they didn't match, the computer made the wrong moves. A small, hidden mistake destroyed the whole mission. Self-sabotage works the exact same way. You might have a big goal. You want a better job. You want a happy relationship. You want to feel calm and confident. You do the work. You study, you try, and you plan. But then, right when you are about to land, you hit the atmosphere and burn up. You pick a fight with your partner for no reason. You wait until the last minute to start a project. You tell yourself you're too tired to exercise. You stay quiet in a meeting when you have the best idea in the room. These aren't just bad habits. They are the results of a hidden math error in your mind. There is a part of you that is trying to protect you from something, but it's using the wrong measurements. It thinks safety means staying exactly where you are. It thinks growth is a threat. The loop of staying stuck. If you are reading this, you probably feel like you are your own worst enemy. You might feel exhausted by a voice in your head that never stops talking. It's the voice that says, "Who do you think you are to try that? You're going to fail, so why even start? They're going to find out you don't know what you're doing. You missed your chance. It's too late now." This is the cycle of self-sabotage. It starts with overthinking. You think about a task so much that it becomes a mountain. Then, because the mountain is too big to climb, you feel anxiety. To get rid of that bad feeling, you procrastinate. You do anything else, check your phone, clean the house, watch TV. Finally, you feel guilt because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. That guilt feeds the voice in your head, and the cycle starts all over again. It feels like being a passenger in a car that is being driven by someone who is lost and angry. You want to go to a nice destination, but the driver keeps taking the wrong turns and screaming at you for it. You might have tried to fix this before. Maybe you bought a planner. Maybe you tried positive thinking. Maybe you just tried to work harder. But these things usually don't work for long. Why? Because they only look at the top of the iceberg. Psychologists often talk about the iceberg model of the mind. The part of the iceberg you can see above the water is your conscious mind. This is where your willpower and your logic live. But the part under the water, the much bigger part, is your unconscious mind. This is where your fears, your past traumas, and your shadow live. You can try to steer the top of the iceberg all you want, but if the part under the water hits something, the whole ship goes down. A new way to lead yourself. This book offers a different path. We aren't going to talk about hacks or quick fixes. We are going to do the real work. We are going to look under the water. The goal isn't just to stop self-sabotage. The goal is to become an integrated person. This means bringing all the parts of yourself together. It means making friends with your shadow so it stops tripping you up. It means learning how to calm your own nervous system so you don't feel like you're in a constant state of fight or flight. By the time you finish this journey, you will be able to identify your triggers in real time. You will see the math error before it causes a crash. Quiet the inner critic. You will learn that the voice in your head isn't the truth, it's just a scared part of you that needs a new job. Regulate your emotions. Instead of being hijacked by anger or fear, you will have tools to stay grounded and calm. Act with grounded confidence. You will move toward your goals not because you are fearless, but because you know how to handle fear when it shows up. This approach is based on a mix of old wisdom and new science. We will use the shadow work of Carl Jung, the resilience of leaders like Eleanor Roosevelt, and the nervous system tools used by modern psychologists. To see how this works in real life, we are going to follow the story of someone who is right where you might be. Meet Elena. Elena Rodriguez is 34 years old and lives in Austin, Texas. If you saw her on the street, you would think she was doing great. She works as a senior UX designer for a big finance company. She has a nice apartment. She is smart, creative, and kind. But Elena has a secret. She feels like a total fraud. Every time she gets a new project at work, she freezes. She worries that this will be the time everyone realizes she isn't actually good at her job. This fear leads to what she calls procrastination. She doesn't just sit around doing nothing. She does everything except the important task. She will spend 4 hours making a perfect grocery list or cleaning her baseboards with a toothbrush just to avoid opening her design software. Her inner critic is relentless. It sounds like a mix of her mother's high expectations and the meanest kids from middle school. It tells her that her ideas are boring and that she's just a girl from a small town playing dress-up in the big city. Lately, the stress has started to show in her body. She wakes up with a clenched jaw. She has headaches that won't go away. She avoids dating because she's afraid that if someone gets too close, they'll see the messy version of her and leave. Elena is tired of being a passenger in her own life. She is tired of the 3 a.m. emails to herself. She knows she has more potential, but she feels like she's trying to run a race with her shoelaces tied together. As we go through this book, we will watch Elena try these tools. We will see her fail, we will see her learn, and we will see her eventually untie those laces. The roadmap ahead. We are going to take this journey one step at a time. First, we will look at why your brain is wired to sabotage you. You will learn about homeostasis, the body's desire to stay the same even if the same is painful. We will look at how the walls you built to protect yourself as a child have become the prison you live in as an adult. Next, we will go into the basement. We will begin the process of shadow work. You will learn how to identify the parts of yourself you have rejected and how to bring them back into the light. This is where the basement ghost lives. We will find out that the ghost isn't a monster. It's just a part of you that has been lonely and scared for a long time. Then, we will tackle the inner critic. We will use techniques to put the critic on trial and take away its power over your emotions. You will learn how to stop believing every thought that pops into your head. After that, we will move into the body. You cannot think your way out of a nervous system that feels like it's under attack. You will learn about the 5-second gap, the space between something happening and your reaction to it. You will learn how to breathe, move, and ground yourself so you can stay in control. We will also look at the perfectionism trap. We will see how trying to be perfect actually keeps you from being good. We will look at history's biggest mistakes, like a Swedish warship that sank after only 1,300 meters, to see what happens when we value looking right over being balanced. Finally, we will talk about resilience. We will learn how to build a mind that doesn't just survive hard times, but grows because of them. You will see how people like Viktor Frankl found meaning in the darkest places on earth, and how you can use that same power to change your life. This journey won't be easy. It requires you to be honest with yourself in a way that might feel uncomfortable at first. But on the other side of that discomfort is something incredible: freedom. The freedom to start a project without shaking. The freedom to accept a compliment without thinking they're lying. The freedom to wake up and feel like you are on your own side. You have spent enough time being your own biggest obstacle. It is time to become your own biggest ally. Let's begin. 1. Why do we sabotage our own success? Mark sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. In his passenger seat sat a folder containing a business plan he had spent 3 years dreaming about. He was parked outside the office of a venture capitalist who had expressed genuine interest in his idea. This was the moment. This was the big break every entrepreneur prays for. But Mark didn't go inside. Instead, he reached for his phone and checked his email. Then he checked his social media. Then he convinced himself that the font on page 12 of his proposal was slightly too small and might look unprofessional. He told himself he should go home, fix the font, and reschedule for next week when he was better prepared. Mark wasn't lazy. He wasn't even necessarily afraid of the meeting. He was afraid of what would happen if the meeting went well. If the investor said yes, Mark's life would change forever. He would have to lead a team, answer to a board, and actually become the person he claimed to be. To avoid that terrifying growth, Mark chose a familiar, comfortable failure. He turned the key in the ignition and drove home, telling himself he was just being thorough. We often think of self-sabotage as a mistake or a character flaw. We treat it like a broken part of our brain that needs to be fixed. But that isn't the whole story. Self-sabotage is actually a very old, very disciplined survival strategy. It is a wall we build to keep ourselves safe, even when that wall eventually becomes our prison. The wall that sank a nation. In the years following the First World War, the leaders of France were haunted by a single crushing memory: the invasion of their land. They had lost millions of men in the muddy trenches, and they were determined that such a thing would never happen again. They wanted total safety. They wanted a way to ensure that no matter what happened in the world, their borders would remain untouched. Their solution was the Maginot Line. Named after the Minister of War, André Maginot, it was the most expensive and impressive set of fortifications ever built. It wasn't just a wall, it was an underground city. It stretched for hundreds of miles along the border with Germany. It featured thick concrete bunkers, retractable turrets, and state-of-the-art communication lines. Inside, soldiers had air conditioning, theaters, and even subways to move them from one section to another. The French military felt invincible. They had overthought every possible way an enemy could attack and built a perfect defense against it. They were so confident in this wall that they stopped training for mobile warfare. They stopped innovating. They became heavy and static, anchored to their massive concrete dream of safety. But there was a problem. The wall was built to fight the last war, not the next one. In 1940, when the German army finally attacked, they didn't try to knock down the Maginot Line. They simply drove around it. They moved through the Ardennes forest, a place the French had decided was impassable, and bypassed the entire multi-billion-dollar fortification in a matter of days. The very thing France had built to save itself became the reason it fell. The soldiers inside the wall were safe from the guns, but they were trapped in a structure that had become irrelevant. This is exactly what happens in our own lives. When we experience pain, rejection, or trauma, our minds build a mental Maginot Line. We create habits like procrastination, perfectionism, or people-pleasing to ensure we never get hurt like that again. We over-engineer our lives to avoid risk. We stay in jobs we hate because they are stable. We avoid deep relationships because they are unpredictable. We feel safe inside our walls, but we eventually realize that the world has moved on without us. We aren't just protected, we are stuck. The secret benefit of staying small. Elena Rodriguez knew all about building walls. As a senior UX designer in the fast-paced world of fintech, her job was to make things look simple and feel safe for users. In her own life, she applied the same logic. She sat in a glass-walled conference room in downtown Austin, her palms damp against the mahogany table. Her boss, a woman named Sarah who moved with the speed of a lightning bolt, was smiling at her. "Elena, the board was blown away by your work on the new app interface," Sarah said. "We want you to step up. We're offering you the lead designer position. It's a huge raise and you'll have your own team." This was the moment Elena had worked toward for a decade. But as the words hit her, she didn't feel joy. She felt a cold, sharp spike of terror in her chest. Immediately, a voice in her head, the basement ghost that lived in the dark corners of her mind, began to whisper. "If you take this, everyone will see you don't actually know what you're doing. You'll have to speak in meetings. You'll fail, and it will be public." Elena didn't even pause to think. "Sarah, I'm so honored," she heard herself say, "but I honestly don't think I'm ready. I really want to focus on my technical skills for another year. Maybe we can revisit this later?" Sarah looked confused. "Are you sure? You're already doing the work of a lead." "I'm sure," Elena said, her voice tight. "I just want to make sure I'm 100% prepared before I take on that kind of responsibility." She walked out of the office feeling a strange mix of crushing disappointment and intense relief. She had successfully sabotaged her own career, and for a few minutes the safety of her current smaller role felt like a warm blanket. This is what psychologists call secondary gain. We don't sabotage ourselves because we want to fail. We do it because there is a hidden reward in staying exactly where we are. For Elena, the reward was avoiding the pressure of leadership and the risk of being found out as a fraud. By saying no to the promotion, she protected her ego from a potential bruise, but she also killed her own growth. The thermostat of the soul. Why is it so hard to just accept the good things that come our way? Why do we feel the need to pull the emergency brake just as we're picking up speed? The answer lies in a biological process called homeostasis. Your body has a built-in thermostat. If you go outside on a cold day, your body shivers to create heat. If you go for a run in the sun, you sweat to cool down. Your body wants to stay at exactly 98.6 degrees. It doesn't care if you're on a beautiful beach or in a cold office. It just wants to stay the same. Your mind has a thermostat too. Psychologist Gay Hendricks calls this the upper limit problem. We each have an internal setting for how much love, success, and creativity we allow ourselves to enjoy. When we go above that setting, when things start going too well, our internal thermostat freaks out. It registers the new level of happiness as a fever. To get back to our normal level of stress or unhappiness, we subconsciously do something to mess it up. We pick a fight with our partner after a perfect date. We get a mystery headache right before a big presentation. We spend money we don't have just as we finally start saving. We aren't trying to hurt ourselves, we are trying to get back to the temperature we're used to. For most of us, feeling okay is a 70-degree room. When life starts feeling like a 90-degree tropical paradise, we start looking for a way to turn on the air conditioner. We sabotage the success to return to the familiar comfort of the struggle. Wearing the mask. The famous Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung spent his life studying why humans act against their own best interests. He believed that each of us carries a persona, a Greek word for mask. The persona is the version of ourselves we present to the world. It's the hard worker, the good daughter, or the humble employee. We create these masks to fit in and to be liked. Alina's mask was the quiet perfectionist. By being the person who never made mistakes and never asked for too much, she felt safe from judgment. The problem, Jung argued, is that the more we identify with the mask, the more we push our true desires and fears into the shadow. If Alina's mask was humble, then her natural ambition, her desire for power, and her fear of failure were all pushed into the basement of her mind. When we sabotage ourselves, it is often the shadow trying to get our attention. It's the part of us we've ignored for too long saying, "If you won't let me be ambitious in a healthy way, I will be destructive in a hidden way." There is an old myth about scorpions that people often use to describe this kind of self-destruction. The story goes that if a scorpion is surrounded by fire, it will sting itself to death rather than be burned. While biologists have proven this isn't true, scorpions are actually immune to their own venom, and the stinging motion is just a muscle spasm from the heat. The metaphor remains powerful. When the heat of life, the pressure to succeed, the fear of change, or the pain of the past becomes too much, we often turn our stingers on ourselves. We would rather destroy our own progress than let the world burn our carefully crafted persona. Identifying your own walls. To stop the cycle of sabotage, we have to start by looking at our own fortifications. We have to ask ourselves, what am I protecting and what is it costing me? Most self-sabotage falls into a few predictable patterns. The procrastination wall. You wait until the last minute so that if you fail, you can say, "I just didn't have enough time," rather than "I wasn't good enough." The perfectionism wall. You set standards so high that they are impossible to meet. This gives you an excuse never to finish anything, protecting you from being judged on the final product. The humility wall. Like Elena, you downplay your talents and turn down opportunities because you're afraid that if you step into the light, people will see your flaws. The conflict avoidance wall. You say yes to everyone else's needs so you never have time to work on your own goals. Your kindness is actually a shield against the risk of following your own path. These walls were likely built a long time ago. Perhaps you had a parent who only noticed you when you were perfect, or a teacher who shamed you for a mistake. At the time, the wall was necessary. It kept you safe. But you are no longer that child, and the enemy you are hiding from might not even exist anymore. Elena sat on a park bench during her lunch break, watching the ducks in a nearby pond. She thought about the promotion she had turned down. She realized she wasn't actually afraid of the work. She was afraid of the feeling of being seen. She had spent years hiding behind her computer screen, being the reliable one who never caused trouble. By staying in the basement, she was safe from the wind, but she was also missing the view. She looked at her hands and noticed she was clenching them into fists. Her body was still in a fight or flight mode, even though she was just sitting on a bench. Her internal Maginot Line was still fully staffed, even though there was no invasion. The vision of a life without walls. Imagine for a moment what your life would look like if you didn't need to protect yourself from your own success. What if, when a great opportunity appeared, your first thought wasn't, "How will I mess this up?" but, "I wonder how far I can take this." What if you could feel a spike of happiness or a burst of success, and instead of turning on the internal air conditioner to cool things down, you simply open the windows and let the warmth in. Breaking the cycle of self-sabotage isn't about fixing a broken brain. It's about realizing that the war is over. You don't need the concrete bunkers anymore. You don't need to stay underground. The goal of this journey isn't to become a person who never feels fear. Fear is a natural part of being human. The goal is to become a person who can feel fear and still move forward. It's about learning to recognize the voice of the basement ghost and saying, "I hear you, and I know you're trying to keep me safe, but I don't need a wall today. I need a bridge." As we move forward, we are going to look at the specific tools you need to dismantle these old fortifications. We will learn how to talk to the inner critic that keeps the walls standing, how to regulate the nervous system when it starts to shiver at the thought of growth, and how to finally invite the parts of yourself you've hidden in the shadow back into the light. The Maginot Line failed because it was static in a world that was moving. Your life is moving. It's time to stop hiding in the concrete and start walking toward the life you were actually meant to live. The walls are thick, but they are made of nothing but old thoughts and ancient fears. And thoughts, unlike concrete, can be changed. You are allowed to be successful. You are allowed to be happy. And most importantly, you are allowed to be seen. The first step is simply acknowledging that the wall exists, and deciding that today is the day you start looking for the door. 2. Shadow work, the path to emotional freedom. A small stone tower stands on the edge of a cold lake in Switzerland. Inside, there is no electricity and no running water. The air smells like wood smoke and old paper. A man sits by a small desk, his hands stained with ink and paint. He is not writing a letter or a grocery list. He is drawing monsters. This man is Carl Jung. In the early 1900s, he was one of the most famous doctors in the world. He worked with the great Sigmund Freud. He had money, a family, and a big house. But inside, he felt like he was falling apart. He was seeing visions of floods and wars. He felt like a ghost was living in his own head, and he didn't know how to talk to it. Most people would have tried to run away from these scary thoughts. They might have tried to work harder or hide their feelings. Jung did the opposite. He decided to walk right into the darkness. He bought a large, expensive book with a red leather cover. For 16 years, he sat in his quiet spaces and wrote down every scary dream and every dark thought he had. This became the Red Book. He wasn't doing this because he wanted to be sad. He did it because he realized a secret that most of us miss. He realized that the parts of ourselves we try to hide, the shadow, are actually where our greatest power lives. He found that when he faced his inner monsters, they stopped being scary. They started giving him advice. They became his teachers. The myth of the good person. We are often told a lie from the time we are very small. The lie is that we should only show our good side to the world. We are told to be nice, to be quiet, and to follow the rules. We learn that being angry is bad. Being selfish is bad. Being loud is bad. Think of your mind like a house. When you are a child, you want your parents and teachers to love you. So when you feel an emotion that they don't like, you don't throw it away. You can't. Instead, you take that emotion and you lock it in the basement. If you were told that big girls don't get angry, you put your anger in the basement. If you were told that boys don't cry, you put your sadness in the basement. Eventually, the basement gets very full. This is what Jung called the shadow. The myth we believe is that if we keep the basement door locked, those feelings will just disappear. We think that by being perfect, we will be happy. But the truth is the opposite. The things we hide don't go away. They just sit in the dark and grow. When the basement gets too full, the things inside start to act out. This is where self-sabotage comes from. Have you ever said something mean to a friend and then wondered, why did I do that? Have you ever felt a sudden burst of fear that stopped you from taking a great new job? That is the basement ghost banging on the floorboards. It wants to be seen. It wants to be let out. Jung realized that you don't become a better person by trying to be perfect.